What's up, guys? This is Max here with WatchmanStrade.com, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk to you guys about a very real topic that a lot of traders I feel out there don't touch up on enough, and it's so important because it's something that you really need to understand and develop as a trader to become successful and have some longevity in this game. And that is definitely taking losses and how to handle them and how to move forward. So I want to go over a trade that I made today, and it was a very poor trade. And basically, I was up pretty nicely on the day. I was up about $2,200. Just a little background information. I was up about $2,200 on a day, and Dust, which is the Bears minor ETF on gold, made a very nice bull run, starting from about 130 to the close. And I traded this, made a couple $100 and got really excited toward the end and wanted to cap off my day with a bang, and saw this nice little washout. And you guys know me, I love washouts. I try to catch the bounce and sell the immediate pop that ensues after the washout. Well, unfortunately for me, I got in on this washout and eventually got dumped on, and also couldn't get out in time. This still washout. The stock pretty much dropped, $1.30 per share, and I couldn't get out in time, and I ended up with a big loss, which wiped out all of my gains on the day, and on top of that, another $6,000 on top of it. So it was not a pretty trade. I definitely sized in too big because I got a little bit too excited. Saw this little nice bull run. It reminded me a lot of the momentum plays such as Baba from yesterday. And also IBIO from a couple Fridays ago, where the stock just pretty much went straight up and all the dips were easy longs, and you're able to get in and get out, make some easy money. Unfortunately, the mistake here I made with Dust was the fact that I didn't realize that ETFs behave a little bit differently. They're very susceptible to and very sensitive to news from any source, or anything can really affect the movement of ETFs. They seem to have a mind of their own, in other words, and I kind of knew that ahead of time, but I was kind of blinded by the fact that this thing was such a strong momentum run that this kind of downside in a matter of seconds was not possible. And that was a really poor assumption, and I definitely paid for it pretty dearly. But nonetheless, overall the mistake was pretty much making an assumption, going in too big, and pretty much, especially right at the close, really usually isn't enough time for this thing to bounce substantially. And then I also tried to hold it after hours because I saw that gold was continuing to go down. And another assumption I made was that since gold was going down, I felt that the Bears minor stock Dust was going to go up, and I didn't have enough time to realize that this stock barely moves after hours. So two pretty big mistakes. Pretty much thinking that this thing wouldn't be susceptible to this down move at such a short period of time. That's one. And number two, assuming that it would bounce after hours in correlation with the gold price action. But in truth, I didn't have enough time to check this and see that it doesn't really trade after hours. So I got stuck thinking that it would bounce, and I ended up with a much bigger loss than I thought. So I had too many shares, bought in the 50s, ended up selling in the 49s. Pretty silly. But I really want to touch up on this topic overall in general on how to deal with losses. This is a very specific example. I just decided to make this video rather spontaneously. I definitely stylize myself as someone who is very real, try my best to be honest as much as possible, because I feel like honesty is the best policy, and people I like to help people, and I want people to be able to learn from my mistakes, and the best way to go about it is by being very honest and telling it how it is, and being very real about the situation. And the situation is I made a pretty bad trade and ended up taking a big loss, and as a result I want people to learn from my mistakes so they don't make the same mistakes. So this is how I generally deal with big losses, okay, in general, or any loss in general. The first step is taking a step back and understand that you made a mistake, okay? Be a man about it. Don't make excuses. And take a step back and be like, you know what? I messed up here. That's number one, okay? take a deep breath, take a step back, and admit that you're wrong. That's the first step, okay? It's very simple, but a lot of people aren't able to do that. A lot of people out there have a lot of pride, they have a lot of ego, and they can't do that. And I'll tell you something, if you have an ego and you have too much pride, you definitely won't last in this game. Because you're going to get so stubborn, you're afraid of being wrong, you don't want to show everyone that you're wrong, you're so afraid of being wrong, that's going to completely cloud your ability to become a successful trader. As I'm here talking to you right now, I mean, I'm completely fine and completely calm because I've taken losses before, and I've developed the proper psychology of how to handle them, and I can continue to continue my life completely fine despite these losses. And if you guys knew me a couple of weeks ago, I took a pretty big loss, actually the biggest loss of my life, of my trading career, on GTAT, where I took a $29,000 loss when I mistimed a bounce play. And pretty much in continuation with how I deal with losses, the first step, taking a step back. The second step, obviously, is to try to recognize, analyze what happened, and make a note of it, and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Okay, nobody's perfect. I want you guys to understand it. Nobody's perfect. People will make mistakes. You and I will make mistakes. The problem arises when you make the same mistake over and over again, because that means you're not learning from your mistakes, and that's where trouble comes in. So what I like to do is I make, number one, a very strong mental note forever imprinted in my head. I will no longer trade ETFs, especially gold correlated ETFs, with size from now on, for this reason, because it's susceptible to this kind of down move that I previously wasn't really aware of. So now I've made a mental note. I will probably write this down somewhere in very bold block letters. Gold ETFs are capable and susceptible to large downward moves in a very short period of time. As a result, I will not go in with a large position anymore in order to prevent myself from exposure to this kind of risk. So forever, that will be ingrained in my head. That will be the lesson learned, and I won't make that mistake again. If I do make that mistake again, then I really need to reassess my trader psychology and my mindset moving forward. So that's the next step. Definitely write down, try to analyze what you did wrong. Be very real and true to yourself. Be very straightforward. Be very honest, and try to figure out what went wrong and how you can resolve the issue and prevent it from happening again. With regards to my GTAT trade, my mistake there was definitely attempting to catch a falling knife on a stock with unchartable support. If you remember GTAT, well, basically what happened was they declared bankruptcy, and the stock tanked from $10 down to 75 cents or whatever it was on this halt and unhalt, and I got stuck. And every time it halted in between, the stock kept gapping down, and I got screwed. So pretty much from then on out, my notes from that trade was to not to attempt to enter a trade as the stock is a falling knife with unchartable support, because the stock hadn't been at anywhere near $1 ever, right? And secondly, don't trade stocks that are susceptible to circuit breaker halts continuously. So basically, GTAT dropped to $1, $2, wherever it was, and you guys know the circuit breaker halts, they halt every single time the stock moves 10% or something like that in a short period of time. Obviously, a stock that's like $1, every 10 cents it's going to halt, right? So what happened was I bought in too early on the bounce and couldn't get out. Every time it just went down 10 cents, it halted, and every time it reopened, it gapped down like another 20 cents or so. And I had way too many shares, and every time I did that, I kept losing money. So these are very difficult situations that you don't want to put yourself in. And my lessons is the best way to go about it is to just avoid those situations. Make a note of when these situations are, recognize them, and just avoid them. So on my GTAT trade, I just pretty much wrote down avoid stocks that are catching catching a falling knives kind of a situation with unchartable support. Okay, I catch falling knives in other instances where there is a a point of reference with support, right? But never when it was unchartable support, because there's no chart history there. So what I do now is, if I see this kind of situation again, I let the stock go ahead, find its bottom, so I have a frame of reference, a defined risk level I could play off of. So what I should have done was let this thing bottom out and then play off of that. But instead I tried to catch it on the way down, and I got screwed. And on top of that, secondly, avoid stocks that are stuck with the circuit breaker halts, especially when they're on the downside, because you don't know when they're going to gap up or gap down. Same reason why I don't hold stocks overnight is because there's just too much of a gamble factor. You don't know if it's going to reopen gapping up, gapping down, and unfortunately for me, it went against me. So those were the notes I made from the GTAT trade. If it does trade today, like I said, I'm going to avoid ETFs from now on with large positions, because this is just a brutal move. 51.5 down to 50.26, and then it went all the way down to 49s after hours with no bounce. So pretty much, like I said, if you ever take a big loss, the first step is to admit that you're wrong. Take a step back, take a deep breath, admit that you're wrong. And secondly, analyze what happened, right? Be very objective, be very honest, be very true to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. And lastly, try to remedy the situation by figuring out what you can do to prevent it from happening again. Okay, like I said, mistakes will happen. You will eventually lose sometimes. All the traders out there that say that you're going to win all the time or whatever, you're never going to take a big loss, that's bullshit. That's not going to happen. Okay, people are going to lose. You and I are going to lose. Life is a lifelong journey of perpetual learning, and I always say that over and over again. And definitely, the best way to go about handling losses is to learn from them and make sure they don't happen again. So I really wanted to make a video on this because I wanted to be very real and very honest and very transparent, and I feel like a lot of people will be able to benefit very highly from this. So overall, hopefully you guys learned a thing or two about dealing with losses. Definitely it took me a while to develop this mentality and this mindset about being very calm, having this very calm demeanor and calm approach and calm reaction to these kind of losses. Obviously, before I would freak out if I lose even $100, but it takes time. It's not gonna, if you're new, if you're gonna take a big loss, you're probably gonna freak out. It's normal. But I'm telling you, as a person who's been trading for over 3.5 years, that the best way to go about it is take a step back, admit that you made a mistake, assess the situation, and make sure that it doesn't happen again and that you don't make the same mistake again. Okay? Alright guys, so hopefully you guys learned a thing or two. It's my 2 cents on how to deal with losses, a very real topic when it comes to trading. And hopefully if you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me at max@watchmadastrade.com. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot, guys.